But then came the receipt. A crumpled piece of paper that fell from his jacket pocket as she was gathering laundry, showing a charge for a hotel room at the Grandview Plaza downtown. The same hotel where they'd spent their honeymoon, where David had promised her forever under the soft glow of champagne and candlelight. The irony cut deeper than any blade could. Sarah had called David's office that afternoon, her voice steady despite the chaos raging inside her chest. His assistant Jennifer had been confused, explaining that Mr. Harrison had left early for a client dinner across town. But the receipt was dated for that exact evening, timestamped at 9:47 p.m., long after any legitimate business dinner would have ended. The next few days passed in a blur of detective work that made Sarah feel like a stranger in her own life. She found herself checking his credit card statements, following his car from a distance, even downloading apps to track his location. Each discovery painted a darker picture. Charges at expensive restaurants she'd never been to, purchases at a jewelry store for items she'd never received, and always those late nights at the Grandview Plaza. Tonight was supposed to be different. David had kissed her goodbye at 6:30, his lips brushing her cheek with what felt like practiced affection rather than genuine love. He'd told her about another important client meeting, how it might run late, how she shouldn't wait up. The same script he'd been reading for weeks, delivered with the same apologetic smile that no longer reached his eyes. But Sarah had made her own plans. She'd called in a favor from her friend Lisa, who worked at the hotel's front desk, and somehow managed to get a duplicate keycard for room 237. The room that appeared on David's credit card statement every Tuesday and Thursday for the past month. The room that was registered under a name she didn't recognize but paid for with their joint account. Now, standing in the carpeted hallway with its soft lighting and the distant sound of elevator music, Sarah felt the weight of 8 years of marriage pressing down on her shoulders. 8 years of shared dreams, inside jokes, and quiet Sunday mornings reading the paper together. 8 years of building a life that might all be a lie. She thought about their last real conversation, just 2 months ago, when they'd talked about finally starting the family they'd always planned. David had seemed excited, his eyes lighting up as he described teaching their future children to ride bikes and helping with homework. Had it all been an act? Had he already checked out of their marriage while she was still planning their future? The keycard felt heavy in her palm as she approached the door. Part of her wanted to turn around, to go home and pretend she'd never found the receipt, never made the phone calls, never discovered the trail of lies that led her here. She could continue living in the comfortable illusion that her marriage was solid, that David's late nights were really about work, that the distance between them was just a rough patch they'd overcome. But she knew she couldn't unknow what she'd learned. The doubt would eat at her, poisoning every interaction, turning every smile into a potential deception and every kiss into a betrayal. She needed the truth, no matter how much it might hurt. Sarah took a deep breath and slid the keycard into the slot. The light blinked green, and she heard the soft click of the lock disengaging. This was it, the moment that would define everything that came next. She turned the handle slowly, her mind racing through all the possible scenarios that waited on the other side. The door opened to reveal a dimly lit room, and Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The space was filled with the warm glow of dozens of candles, their flames dancing across rose petals scattered on every surface. Soft jazz music played from hidden speakers, creating an atmosphere of intimate romance that made her heart skip for all the wrong reasons. But it wasn't the romantic setup that made Sarah's world tilt on its axis. It was the figure sitting on the edge of the bed, not David, but her sister Emma, dressed in a silk robe and holding a champagne flute with shaking hands. Emma's eyes went wide with terror as she saw Sarah in the doorway, the color draining from her face as the glass slipped from her fingers and shattered on the hardwood floor. The bathroom door opened, and David emerged wearing nothing but a hotel bathrobe, a bottle of champagne in his hand and a smile on his face that died the moment he saw his wife standing in the doorway. The bottle crashed to the floor, champagne foaming across the scattered rose petals as the three of them stood frozen in a tableau of betrayal that would be burned into Sarah's memory forever. The silence stretched between them, heavy with 8 years of marriage, 26 years of sisterhood, and the death of trust that could never be rebuilt. Sarah felt something inside her chest break, not her heart, but something deeper and more fundamental. The foundation of everything she'd believed about love, family, and the people closest to her crumbled in that single moment. David started to speak, his mouth moving soundlessly before finding his voice. Emma wrapped the robe tighter around herself, tears streaming down her face as she whispered Sarah's name like a prayer or an apology. But Sarah heard none of it over the roaring in her ears, the sound of her entire world reshaping itself around this new, devastating reality. She took one last look at the scene before her, memorizing every detail of the moment her old life ended and her new one began. Then Sarah turned and walked away, her steps steady and sure despite the earthquake happening inside her soul. Behind her, she could hear David calling her name, but she didn't look back. Some doors, once opened, could never be closed again, and some truths, once discovered, changed everything that came after. Sarah had found her answer, and now she had to decide what to do with it. The hotel keycard fell from her fingers as she walked toward the elevator, leaving behind the wreckage of everything she thought she knew about love, trust, and the people who were supposed to matter most. The real story was just beginning.